afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Feazell, and I'm your host of Afternoon Drive Home on IC Radio in the town of Geraldine, Alabama, your source for news and entertainment. You can also find us on television, channel 182 on Charter Communications and Abundant TV, which is found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Man, we've had a busy weekend. It was football, SEC, the whole works, and your absolute favorite sports announcer, AP Steadham. Hey, AP, how are you doing today?
Hey, Don, I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Oh, we're always tickled to death to have you here. I guess let's go ahead and dig into it because we had a ball game. First of all, let's talk about your show. We're going to talk about it at the end of the segment as well. And so we air your show every Friday, 4 o'clock. Let's talk about it for a second.
Yeah, Don, I hope people enjoyed the last show we had because we had an Alabama and a Tennessee feature with Craig Young, the dad of Bryce Young. We had Horace McCoy, the dad of Brew McCoy, and both were crucial in that ball game, Donna. Both of
Ooh.
their sons. I mean, Bryce
Oh,
Young of Alabama and Brew McCoy made that spectacular 27-yard reception to set up the game-winning field goal of 40 yards for Tennessee. It was a fabulous ball game offensively. Anyway, defensively, there wasn't too much.
I have no more fingernails. I bit them all off.
It
So let's
was,
talk about
yeah,
that.
they had the ebbs and flows of that game, Donna. Tennessee came out on fire, 21 nothing right away, 28 to 10, and then they came back. Alabama came all the way back to tie it and move ahead, but Tennessee wasn't going to go away. Their quarterback Hendon Hooker, who Donna I think is one of the leading candidates right now for the Heisman Trophy. I mean, he's that tremendous. He does so much for his team. He's accurate, has great pocket presence, and he can run with the football as well. And he's so accurate. And Donna, Alabama could not guard their receivers, especially Hyatt, number 11. 5 touchdowns in a game, set a record, tied a record. He was phenomenal. But Alabama, it was like they knew he was out there, but it was like the high school versus the middle school in that
I'm
department.
afraid so. Uh-huh. You know something else too, and you and I have talked about this several times. Sometimes the kicker is the winner or the loser. What has happened to
Mm.
Alabama's kicker?
Yeah, Donna, you're exactly correct. You always mention that about the kicker. It's really important. But
Mhm.
Alabama had a chance at the end to attempt a 50-yard field goal, which, Donna, it's not the longest field goal that we'll see from kickers on the college level. So 50 yards, most kickers in college can make a 50-yard field goal.
Mhm.
Some, the percentage is higher, but Will Reichert, I thought he might make that field goal. It's a nice Saturday evening in Knoxville. The weather was not a factor. It wasn't raining. The wind wasn't overwhelming, but he
Mhm.
missed it to the right. And then Tennessee's kicker, who missed an extra point, Don. Imagine that. You're the kicker to try to win the game from 40 yards. You missed an extra point. You make the winning field goal for Tennessee
Mhm.
to beat Alabama for the first time in 15 years, for the
Mhm.
first time since 1907, score 50 points against Alabama, 52 points. The last time that happened was Sewanee, another team from Tennessee, scored 54 115 years ago. But
Uh-huh.
the kicking game is so important, we know. And Tennessee they faltered by missing the extra point, but he had the redemption by having the game-winning field goal.
So who do you think the Herald player is this week with Tennessee? Is it the
Oh
kicker?
yeah, it's the kicker, the quarterback, and the wide receiver. And then Donna, defensively, even though they gave up 42 points on the offensive side, Alabama got 7 points when the Tennessee quarterback dropped the ball and Dallas Turner scooped and scored on a short play of 10, 15 yards. But they stopped Alabama early. They put pressure. I think it was 8 or 9 pressures on Bryce Young throughout the ball game. Alabama had 0 pressures on the quarterback. I think they had a sack. But they gave themselves some extra possessions, which helped
Mhm.
them. As we always say, if you have a high powered team, we want to keep those possessions low because more than likely you have a hot quarterback and a hot offensive team. They're going to put points on the board. You're going to be behind. And Alabama was down 28 to 10. Uh, thankfully for them, Bryce Young, he led the comeback to tie the game and move ahead. But Tennessee would not surrender. That was going to be their day. They were determined to beat Alabama, and they did. So it's
Mhm.
a credit to them. Both sides fought hard. No one gave up, and it was right to the end.
Well, you and I have been talking about this a couple of years. We've been watching Tennessee
That's exactly, Don.
and doing exactly like you said. And so now, how did this affect the rankings?
Yeah, Alabama, I think, moved down to sixth in some polls and a little bit lower in some of them. In Tennessee, I think they're at three in both. I believe that's the case. But so it moved them up. Donna, Tennessee, for all the Tennessee folks listening, they're in an excellent position because
Mhm.
they have to face Kentucky down the road in Knoxville. That was a difficult ball game last year, 45-42 type ball game. They could actually lose that game, Donna, and then they played Georgia in Athens November 5th. And of course, they would have to win that game. But they do have a little bit of a luxury, like I said. They can lose one game. And Kentucky's a good football team as they uh, shut down a high scoring Mississippi State team. It was 3-3 at halftime, ended up winning by double digits the second half. So, but Tennessee, Donna, they have themselves a fine coach and a tremendous quarterback who, as I said, is up for the Heisman, I believe, if he continues his winning performance on the field with his passing and leadership and his dual threat. Excellent player. We noted, last year when he came on the scene and he was inserted, I think it was a Pittsburgh game, had 31 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions. This year, just that first interception was the Alabama game, the first one of the year. So he's on track to do some big things at Tennessee. But Tennessee, Donna, they got to play a little bit better defense. We always talk about the defense, Donna, because you must stop the other team. But like I said, they had enough, and 8 or 9 pressures on Bryce Young was the difference because Alabama had no pressures, and you have Will Anderson Jr., who I consider the best defensive player in America. He had a couple of tackles, and we got to the quarterback once, and Dallas Turner, had the scoop and score, but they were outmatched. They could not guard those Tennessee receivers, and
Mhm.
the running backs played well for Tennessee. If Alabama doesn't have Jahmyr Gibbs, number one, the running back to transfer from Georgia Tech, I think they might lose a couple of games this year, but they're
Mhm.
lucky to have him. He caught the ball out of the backfield, had 100 yards rushing, and Bryce Young had 445 yards passing. I don't think there's anything more the offense could have done.
Mhm. Well, a lot of folks would say that Tennessee actually, because really in all discussion with past years with Alabama, been number one for a really long time. So in a sense, actually Tennessee moved up the ranks pretty good because again, in a sense, you can say they practically beat the number one team in the nation.
Well, they beat one of the top teams in the Southeast, Georgia and Alabama. They're right up there. So
Yeah.
now they played Alabama at home,
Hmm.
and the great crowd, 100,000 plus, and they have to host Kentucky in 2 weeks, and then they travel to Athens, Georgia, to play the Bulldogs, which will be a sensational game. I can't wait for that. But like I say, Tennessee, their destiny is in their hands.
It most
They
certainly is.
Yeah, they can reach that SEC championship game, but you have those Bulldogs and Wildcats first, and but I think they can win both games. I really do.
Well, it's still unpredictable, but I'll have to tell you, and how much does this play into it? Because when we saw the game, you all you could see is just a sea of orange. I mean, it
Yeah.
was just it's how intimidating is that to the other team?
Well, I think yeah, definitely can be intimidating, Donna. But I think that Alabama, they've been through this many, many times. The program through the years, they have been the team visiting, and there's big crowds. They're loud, they're raucous, they're boisterous. But Alabama, I think, is used to that. I don't think it affected them because they scored the 49 points and they
Mm-hmm.
came back from an 18-point deficit. So no, it was just that those Tennessee's receiver and quarterback that was the problem for Alabama.
I'd
Yeah,
say it was, but I'm going to tell you what, Alabama has been rock stars the past few years. I mean, you got to
yeah.
say they got it going on.
Oh yes, and then they have their destiny in their hands as well, Donna. They just can't afford to lose another game So Alabama, they have to travel to they have to host Mississippi State, who's coming off that loss, as I mentioned, to Kentucky. So they're not too happy. That they can play much better offensively. Mississippi State, they could put 40 points on you. You know, their quarterback has thrown for over 2,000 yards, and that was before last week's game. So they could put 40 points on you with that air raid offense. And defensively, they play fairly well too. So, but Alabama's got to travel to LSU that same weekend that Tennessee plays Georgia. So there's some games on their schedule. They have the Auburn game at the end of the year. So Alabama's got a lot of work to be done
Yeah.
before their destiny is determined. But
Yeah.
it's always fun. It's always fun. The SEC. What's fun, Don. There's more competition now in the league. Other teams are
Mhm.
beating some of the top ranked teams and competing against them. Now you have Tennessee on the east side. Those Georgia folks, I'm sure they're a little bit nervous now of
Yeah.
Tennessee.
I think they are too. So, what do you think's going on in the mind of Coach Saban this morning?
Well, I think he's scratching his head because here's the defense played fairly well most of the year. They have all these 4 and 5 star players, but they were no match for Tennessee receivers. You're supposed to
Mhm.
be, he coaches that position. I mean, he always jokes that he's the highest paid graduate assistant coaching the defensive backs, and they just had no answers for Tennessee and that quarterback and those receivers and that offensive system that Coach Heupel has implemented. And Donna, let's go back to Tennessee for a second. You know, when he was selected the coach, he came from Central Florida because his athletic director, uh, uh, by the name of White, he came from Central Florida as well, and they kind of poked fun at him because they hired a search firm, and he ends up hiring the fellow who was 2 doors down from him at Central Florida in Orlando. Well, that turns out to be a pretty good selection for
Mhm.
Tennessee. And
Mhm.
he was confident on the sidelines. He doesn't seem to get rattled. He has his offensive plan. What I'd like to see from Tennessee is to become more than Oklahoma East, meaning
Mhm.
that Oklahoma had these good teams through the years, and Josh Heupel was the quarterback when he won the championship way back in '99. But he was an offensive coordinator there, I think, or a quarterback coach. They had plenty of offense, but their defense never got better. They were always in the game because they could put up a lot of points.
Mhm.
Well, you need to get some complementary football by attracting some defensive players. But I think Tennessee's in an excellent position.
Mhm.
They're going to be expanding the SEC soon with Oklahoma and Tennessee. If he can get some defensive players, because he's going to get some offensive players to recruit at Tennessee, but if he can get some defensive players,
Mhm.
he can get that. And Tennessee's a blue blooded team. They're one of the top 10 all time. I think they're like ninth in wins. I think eighth or ninth in wins. So they're a top 10
Mhm.
overall program. Just
Mhm.
get that defense, and they always have good kicking. But Tennessee's kicker missed that extra point, but he made the winning field goal from 40 yards. So
Mhm.
you have to give the Tennessee kicker a lot of credit and their team as well for just
Mhm.
moving ahead of Alabama. They got behind, but they didn't lose faith, and they came back and won the ball
Mhm. The questions that have been proposed to me have
game.
been about the kicker at Alabama kicker. Does he have a future?
I mean, he's the kicker. I don't think they have anybody close to his ability. He's just got to regain his confidence. And
Mhm.
Donna, it's like in basketball, you have to keep shooting. You have to keep attempting those kicks. Now, Coach Saban moving forward when he makes these decisions, Donna, I'm not sure if he attempts a 50-yard field goal if it's fourth down and 3.
Yeah, he's
He
going to
might
rethink that.
he might he'd be thinking in his head of be all right, should I attempt this 50-yard field goal or go for it on fourth down? That's going to be the challenge with him as a coach, as a head coach when he makes that decision now because he's not certain about his kicker.
Mhm. Then there's Auburn.
Auburn played their best game offensively, Don. 300 yards rushing against Ole Miss. That was with a makeshift line, meaning that they had to have some substitutes. People were injured and out of the lineup. So, but they couldn't stop Ole Miss from rushing the football well. Ole Miss had over 400. And Don, it was funny because Jonathan Mingo's a wide receiver from Ole Miss. The week before, he set a school record, 247 yards. I'm not even sure if he caught a pass, but Ole Miss still won the game because they were able to run the football against Auburn's defense, which I think, Donna, is just tired from all
Mhm.
these prior games. And when Auburn didn't have much of an offense and it was 3-and-out, they were punting the ball. So, but Auburn, Coach Harsin, he made a good decision. Robbie Ashford started out kind of slow and he struggled. He set him on the bench, put in TJ Finley. He had a turnover. He fumbled the ball, but when Robbie Ashford came back, he played much better. He got the ball to 7 different receivers, and they put 34 points on the board. But
Mhm.
Auburn's defense could not stop Ole Miss, so it didn't matter. But Auburn, they're going to keep fighting. There's some winnable games on their schedule, Donna. They have to play Arkansas, Texas A&M, so they and Western Kentucky. So there are some games that they can win, and they'll keep fighting. And Robbie Ashford seems to be the quarterback, even if TJ Finley comes back, I think.
Mhm. Who are the top five this week?
Yeah, the top five, a little bit of a rearrangement there. Ohio State,
Mhm.
Georgia, Tennessee. Now Michigan down, they put a beating on Penn State. That was a 41-14, something like that. Yeah,
Mhm.
they got a good football team. Clemson still undefeated. USC, the team that I had for the national surprise, they were upset by Utah. So yeah, you have that top five, and then maybe Alabama in there at six, or TCU's undefeated still. They had an overtime. I don't know if that was overtime, but the 43-40, I think it was overtime against Oklahoma State. So yeah, but those are the top teams. Like I say, Tennessee is number 3 now, which is like I said, we've been talking about them for a long time, this last year and a half, saying they were getting better. And this year was the season we're going to find out if they could beat Alabama, and they did after 15 years.
Mhm. If they had a rematch, say in a month, how do you think
Right.
that would end?
Yeah, I'm still thinking this is something historically that I try to look at, Donna. When Alabama and Nick Saban plays against a spectacular quarterback like Johnny Manziel or Deshaun Watson of Clemson,
Mhm.
surprisingly, the second time they have not stopped that quarterback. He still had the high production. What happened was either Alabama scored more points on offense, or Clemson actually beat Alabama the second time they played.
Mhm.
So I don't know if I have high hopes if they play Tennessee again. You probably have to have some turnovers on your side, more turnovers in Alabama's favor for them to win. I don't think they can withstand playing against that offense because they could not guard those receivers. And that quarterback, he's going to play well, I'm pretty sure. So you have to get Alabama had no pressures on the quarterback. I think they had a sack, but Tennessee ended up with, I think, 8 or 9 pressures against
Mhm.
Alabama. So when you ask me about the rematch, that's historically, those are just 2 examples that I've observed through the years that
Mhm.
those quarterbacks, Alabama didn't shut them out the second time either.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm keep thinking about because Coach Saban has a brilliant mind. I mean, he really does. He wouldn't be where he is without it.
No,
And
no.
I'm not so sure he lets a lot of people influence him, but if he could play this game over again, what do you think he would do differently?
I think, Donna, if I was Alabama and Coach Saban, I would try to make the running backs of Tennessee the stars of the game. So
Hmm.
you're going to give up a lot of yards between the 20s. You're going to they might have 150. One of their running backs might have 150 yards, but you're going to keep everybody in front of you, tackle the running back, and keep those receivers in front of you so there's no long touchdowns like you saw on Saturday. And then when you get down to the 20-yard line, you're going to come up with some type of defense because normally that's tougher to score from the 20 down than it is from the 50. If you're getting those long touchdown passes, you can't guard those wide receivers that are running by you. So let them run between the 20s. A lot of yardage is going to be given up, but stiffen up your defense. Come up with a
Hmm.
plan where you're going to be able to, because you can, those receivers, they can't run by. There's only 20 yards, right, Tom? You should
Hmm.
be able to stay with them.
That's
So
true.
if you could come up with a plan to do better in the red zone, that I would let the Tennessee running back or running backs be the stars of the game, not the wide receiver that ran by you 5 times for a touchdown.
Hmm.
What you
Ryan,
say?
I'm receiving text messages and this is actually a recorded show. So I'm receiving text messages for questions for you. And a lot of it, and I know a lot of time has been put on the Alabama Tennessee game today. But let's talk a little bit about the penalties. And Ryan is right. There were tons of penalties this time.
Yeah,
How
record
did that
setting
affect it?
17. Yeah, record 17 penalties, Donna. I mean, that was crucial, especially the last part of the game where there was a potential interception. The ball was tipped, but a pass interference was called on Alabama. I wasn't positive about that play, that pass interference call, but I
Mhm.
also thought that when they called the pass interference on Tennessee, it looked like number 7 of Alabama, the wide receiver in the end zone, he dragged the defensive player to the ground, and they called the penalty against Tennessee.
I
So that was a
know it.
clever, that was a
Uh-huh.
clever move. I mean,
Yeah.
that's done in basketball when you grab the other defender's arm, and it looks like he's grabbing you, but really you locked his arm in on your body. So the official's calling the penalty on you. It looked like the same type of play in football. He grabbed the defensive player from Tennessee to make it look like he pushed him, and so that was a clever play by the Alabama wide receiver Brooks, number 7. So there were some missed calls, I thought, but
I thought so
th-
too.
that's that's the way it plays out, Don. I mean, you're going to have those errors, human errors, and you have to, in a high scoring game like that, it's not that one play that lost it for you. I don't believe you had
Yeah.
many chances to win the ball game.
Absolutely. Now, there were other folks who played football this past weekend. So let's talk about them too.
Yes, yeah, I was surprised. Was surprised that Kentucky beat Mississippi State in Lexington. I
Mhm.
was surprised that LSU went to Gainesville, Florida, and put 45 points on those Gators because now their offense is coming alive. The LSU quarterback, the transfer from Arizona State, Jaden Daniels,
Mhm.
he's becoming a force, and they're getting Butte, the sensational wide receiver, involved. He's very good for LSU. He's been kind of quiet this season. They haven't had as much chemistry as I thought prior to the season. So LSU, that was a big victory for them. They're 5-2 right now, LSU, and they'll be hosting Alabama in a couple weeks. They're hosting a big game. They're hosting Ole Miss this
Mhm.
weekend in Baton Rouge. That's the game I'll be at this weekend down at Ole Miss and at LSU in Baton Rouge.
Mhm.
So Arkansas went on the road, and I thought there'd possibly be a fourth loss. I mean, we discussed this. They won 52-35 over Utah, over BYU in Utah. So that was a nice victory for them because they had a 3-game losing streak. So they turned that
Mhm.
around. But yeah, those are 3 surprises for me: Arkansas winning, LSU winning, and Kentucky winning. Those are 3 surprises in the games that I've watched part of those this Saturday.
Who's your coach of the week?
The coach of the week, it's got to be Josh Heupel, I believe, Tennessee. When you score 52 points against an Alabama team, that hasn't happened in 115 years, and you have that vaunted Alabama defense with Will Anderson Jr. and company,
Mm.
and your offense was unstoppable.
So, who did you say Tennessee was playing on the next game?
Yeah. The next game, Donna, they have to play Tennessee Martin in Knoxville, so that'll
Mhm.
be this weekend on the 22nd. But the following weekend, they host Kentucky,
Mhm.
so that'll be a big challenge for them because
Yeah.
the two quarterbacks going out of Will Levis of Kentucky, a
Mhm.
very good quarterback, probably a first round draft choice, and then Hendon Hooker, who we know right now is one of the leading candidates, if not the leading candidate for the Heisman Trophy. So, yeah, but Tennessee, like I say, they're in a good spot. They could lose that Kentucky game and then beat Georgia, and they'd still, I think, would be in that SEC championship game. They would defeat all those other opponents.
I've got to say, I thought Alabama and Auburn fans were gloating a lot. I mean, because I tell you, we brag a lot. My phone is burning
Is it? Is it?
with Tennessee fans.
Tennessee folks, yeah. It's been a while since they've been able to celebrate their team, and they should. They have a
Yeah,
really good
they've
football
worked
team.
for it.
Yeah,
They have.
they have an excellent team. I know they're happy with their new coach, and like I said, if they get better defensively down the road in the next couple of years, they could really give Georgia fits on that side in Alabama every year. Sure
Uh-huh.
can.
Who's going to be your game of the week?
The
Who are
game,
you really going to be
I
looking
think, yeah, I'm looking at that old game. I'll be attending that Ole Miss
at?
LSU game right now because they're big rivals, Ole Miss and LSU.
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
And so Ole Miss has an undefeated team, first time in, I don't know, it's got to be close to 60 years, I think, something like that. Maybe that they're 7-0, something
Hmm.
like that. It's been decades.
Hmm.
So that's a huge game for them since LSU now seems to be playing much better offensively as a unit. Defensively they give up some points, but we saw so does Ole Miss.
Hmm.
So, I think the turnovers, as always, is going to be a key because both offenses, I think they're going to score quite a few points. So if one team gets a few more possessions, that's the difference. And then, of course, the kicking game, as you always mentioned, down the kicking game, it's important.
Hmm.
And it'll be the nationally televised game, the 2:30 Central game
Hmm.
this week, Ole Miss at LSU. So
Hmm.
that's a game I'm looking for. Some of the other
So,
games, Alabama's got to host Mississippi State.
mhm.
Yeah.
That's going to be one. And Frank just sent a message right here. Frank, let it go. Frank says we need to replace Saban. Frank,
Alabama can still win out. They're fine. You have to win the
I
rest of the
mean,
games. Yeah, they're
come
fine.
back.
They're still in a position to achieve
Uh,
some goals. No question. Yeah.
oh yeah, they're still a powerhouse. Frank, you're
Yeah.
giving up on them.
Yeah. I mean, Frank, come back to us, Frank. Come back.
Yeah. Stop it. Absolutely. Okay. So we got about 2 minutes left. I want to talk about your other show. And because this is such a talking about the SEC, this is you guys are really doing well here. And as far as I know, we got a lot of listeners here. The show is actually aired here on IC Radio on Fridays at 4. So what's going on?
At 4 p.m. Yeah, Donna, my guest this week is going to be Auburn head coach Brian Harsin.
Mm-hmm.
So people need to listen to that interview. Going to get a chance to interview Coach, and he's coming off that tough loss. They have a bye this week, so we're going to check in with Coach Brian Harsin, the head coach of Auburn University football. So looking forward to that. And we discuss the games every week. Donna, we talk about the games from the prior week, and then we preview the upcoming ball game. So we have fun, and we mention the teams on the national scene as well because eventually the SEC competes against the Big Ten, the Big 12, the ACC, the Pac-12, all these other conferences. So we have fun every week, Kelly and I, just discussing college football. We love it, and we know the fans love it, and it's just. I love the pageantry of college football. I love the bands. I love the competition. I love the coaches who have to come up with the game plans and the schemes to try to beat each other. So we have a lot of fun on our show, and we always have a guest. And like I said, this week it's Coach Brian Harsin of Auburn. So tune in at 4 p.m. on IC Radio. This is the channel, and listen in. And you can also hear the archive version. If you missed an episode, you can go back. Whatever week you want to listen to a particular guest or show. So we try to keep that for our listening audience as well.
Absolutely. Kelly's doing an awesome job. Absolutely. She's
She
asking the
is.
right questions too.
She does. She does. Yeah, Kelly's very good, very perceptive, and she calls herself the people's reporter.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
Absolutely agree.
very good.
AP, we're going to have to call it a day. Thank you so much for watching or for watching us. And AP, thank you so much for being on the show. It's always awesome.
Hey, Donna, my pleasure. And those Tennessee fans, they can shout
They're
it from the
gloating.
mountaintop.
They're gloating. Absolutely. Okay, AP, thank you again. And thank you for watching, everybody. And get ready for another awesome, awesome guest coming up in just a few minutes. Y'all hang in there, okay? Bye, AP.
Bye, Donna.